So, morning everybody, welcome to our fourth webinar. Can't believe the time's going so quick actually, but we're quite well into our lockdown over here, and obviously we put these on to give you guys some at-home exercises to work on for your technique. We've been sort of surprised, as I said last week, quite a lot more people tuned in than we thought would do. I think we're up to about 80,000 views at the moment over the last few weeks, which is, we was expecting a couple of thousand, but not that many. So it's great that everyone's getting involved. A lot of questions have been coming in. Last week's topic was leg steering range. This week's topic is leg leaning angulation, making the angles, dynamic angles. But on last week's topic, we had quite a lot of people actually writing in with it, and we wasn't surprised. We weren't surprised of the information that we received back. So because we've done this over 4,000 people doing the test, a lot of people sent in images to us on the Facebook Messenger, and we saw so many cases of sort of 60-70 degrees one direction, 30-40 degrees the other. And really interestingly, again, capturing more data on this, because it is an interesting point for skiing. And we're going to show you some things later on the screen to show it. The people were making improvements, and I want to mention one person, because Adrian Hamilton, who's a Canadian guy, just finished up his Canadian level 3. But we've been talking on the phone quite a lot since week 1 of the webinars, and really knowledgeable guy about ski technique, and he's trained with the Canadians, and they're a great association to work with and train with. But also from a physiological point of view, he sort of knows what he's doing. And he went away last week, and one of the points, one of the things we want to make clear on the webinar, we're not sort of telling you a way you should ski or a style you should ski in. We're just sort of giving you pointers that will probably help you from a physiological point of view more than anything, like the biomechanics of skiing. And as we said, we've made some good progress with people on this so far. But what was interesting with Adrian, he's persistently had a blockage. His brain knows what he wants to do when he turns left. When he turns right, his brain connects with his body, and everything really works and flows. And what Adrian showed us from last week, and I'll bring it up on the screen, very interesting ranges of movement. And Rob from the team posted this yesterday. I know some of you were looking at it on Facebook. If you can see up on the screen here, I'll bring the camera over actually, so you can look at it a little bit easier. So up on the screen there, you can see Adrian's previous week. So day 1 on here, you can see his right leg there gets to about 37, 38 degrees when he's trying to steer towards the left. Now, take into account his left turn is his weaker turn. His left turn is the one where sometimes his pelvis rotates around, and it can sort of remove a lot of the dynamics from a turn. His right turn is his strong turn, but on his leg here, you can see the difference on the feet. His foot, without any restriction at all, steered across to 70 degrees. So technically, this is what's really interesting. A skier like Adrian, looking at his right turn, would pass with ease a level 3 technical exam. However, the exam, a bit like skiing down the steep couloir from a practical sense, you're only as good really as your weaker turn, from a technical point of view, but also from a safety point of view of skiing on steeps. So on this side here, he's obviously restricted. Now, what was interesting about Adrian is he came at us with some information about a soft tissue restriction. He knew he had some sort of soft tissue that wasn't allowing this to go through. He put in so much effort and energy into this exercise. I'll just bring this a bit closer so you can see and get a definite sort of picture here. So he brought in quite a lot of exercise routine. So one of the things we always say about these exercises, if you just touch on them, you won't always get the result you're looking for. You've really got to give it some welly. You've got to practice it as a routine. You've got to bring it into your day-to-day to make it come in there. And he was working, he's worked through 2,000 or 3,000 rotations so far on this exercise. So it's a big thing from Adrian's point of view, and obviously from where he worked with it. He's now gone on the week 2 to a 50 degrees. Now, even though that might not sound a lot, that's like 12, 13 degrees difference. If you imagine you're trying to ski in a situation where, put your mind into that situation where you're in the steep couloir or in a situation where you might have a little bit of the fear kicking in, that you want to definitely know that you can make that turn, especially when you're skiing in exposed areas and the snow is not the nicest it can be. So that will make a huge difference for him, because if he can get around to 50 degrees, the way that his ski is going to grip and hold and protect him before his hip starts rotating around the turn. As we said last week, the hip rotation is a thing that can sometimes dampen out and sort of make weaker that turn where the ski won't grip as well for you. So he'll change that to a degree. The thing about it is, that's in 6 days, and this is the point we want to get across. He had a very stubborn situation with this right leg not rotating. He's had it for years. Interestingly, and Adrian agreed, there might be more ski technique development in his own work that he's done at home than possibly what he would have had done if he wasn't working on that so intensely and was working on trying to finish his turns off, trying to create dynamic angles and edge grip as he goes through that left-hand turn. So it's going to be really interesting. Actually, the conversation we had yesterday when we were recapping on these latest scores of getting up to 50 degrees and possibly even beyond that. I think last night, he may have got beyond the 50 degree mark. In 2 or 3 weeks, and it's usually around 3 weeks that it takes the body, if you're not going to overstress the joints, it takes the body to respond. Then there's every chance he could get that up to 60 degrees and possibly in the future matching the absolute sort of 70 degrees that he gets out of his left leg going right. And if that's the case, to really put that point across, and this is the bit we really want to, in terms of being locked down and working at home on your exercises, there's a huge amount that Adrian may have done within 6 days of following through some real, as we say, it's very basic work, but repetition, looking at your ranges of movement that need to match on the mountain. And I think it's worked for him there. One of the things, that we did as well, there's so much information and content on the internet about stretching. And with this, we sent Adrian some links to some video, and the videos, one of them was specifically showing some exercises to try and help work through that. The links to the videos, I think Rob will put up online. To be honest with you, we didn't do a huge amount of research because there's so much out there. We just literally looked at the first thing we found when we talked about inner rotation. And you can see here on the screen, I'll bring the camera closer for you, that the movement that's happening there is just a simple exercise. And we said last week we would recap on some of these exercises. So what we'll do is we'll just, quickly go through a little bit of what we talk about sometimes. So as a recap, we talked about looking at the outer part, the glutes sometimes, and the hips can be tight around your piriformis. And there are a couple of little stretches that we sometimes do for that. We talked last week, a lot of people can be tight here. We want people eventually over time to be able to open out in the hips a little bit, open out in the glutes and the piriformis. And where this angle of the leg here, if you can see, where this angle might be at a sort of a diagonal angle, eventually with time, we want to try and see that people can get that angle parallel to your shoulders. We wouldn't expect that sort of thing straight away, and it would take a little bit of time, but work your way through that. Intermittently, it's really nice to sort of look at these exercises here, feet this far apart, as you can see on the screen, and like I said, Rob will post this video, but just working along the line of practicing and exercising internal rotation in a stress-free way. Now, a lot of the time, people won't get their knee to the ground. It may only come to here, and it's a starting point. But the thing about it is, like we've seen from Adrian Hamilton and the work he did this week, whatever might only get to that angle there, if you give it time, you're going to see yourself, because it's where you're trying to push your body towards, you're going to see yourself increasing that internal rotation by quite a few degrees, but not rushing to get there, doing it bit by bit, monitoring it, and working out that range. Another one that we do with people, however, this is the one that I wouldn't recommend doing on your own. I'd only sort of do this one because of the stress it can sometimes put through your knee joint. Doing this with someone who's either a fitness professional or if you go into a regular yoga class, you can work it. But the classic sort of pigeon stretch, a lot of people can be quite tight up in and around this ball and socket joint. We aim to try and get the leg on the ground and the body sort of facing forwards and seeing eventually how you can relax down with that. A lot of people may find that the leg is at an angle like like this, diagonally. You want to keep it at an angle where the legs at right angles at the front. But that's another one that you'll find makes a difference. Going through these stretches, the thing that's really interesting, and not just for this, but for many aspects of looking at the biomechanics of skiing, quite quickly, you'll usually find that tightness in one side of the body compared to the other. And it might make quite a big difference on that. Another one to look at for testing, if you can do this in front of a mirror, it's really useful, but just working it in a way where you're allowing your outside leg to drop. One side, if you look at it, or if you get someone to take a photograph or check it, when you're allowing your foot to drop outwards, you'll see again a side of the body that's tighter. And then one other exercise to work on, which we look at, you can put a towel or roller in between your legs, but trying to use the muscles in your leg to create that internal rotation. So effectively, you're lifting the weight of your foot, putting a towel in between your legs or a foam roller, and that would be a really good exercise to try and take forward. But between this one and another link that Rob will post onto the Facebook page now, you'll see quite a big difference on that. Just going to readjust the camera, guys, so I can take this to show you something on the screen. So that's like a little bit of a recap on what we did last week. In terms of that recap, keep in touch with us. The thing that Adrian did, which was really good, he went away and he worked on developing that exercise, but he kept in touch. You know, he wrote us really simple messages, a couple of phone calls, and interestingly, it wasn't just about us giving information to Adrian. I was learning a lot. We were learning a lot in terms of like how people develop and pick things up. So it's not a one-way thing of us sort of giving out information. It's very much, especially when you get chatting to people that have got a good knowledge of skiing, they help us, you know, develop what we're putting out there to people. So that's what we encourage. We really encourage everyone to not sort of feel like they can't ask a question or can't put it across. We're there to help, and at the moment, because of the lockdown, obviously, it's an ideal time to take advantage of that, where normally we'd be rushing around and obviously skiing around the mountain. So that's kind of like a summary on what we did last week, and we just want you guys to sort of take on board that Adrian didn't just get those results overnight. A couple of thousand rotations is what got him there, and that's really what makes a big thing. So from this week's point of view, guys, the topic, as we said on week 4, and again, you'll find this on the website, which Jordan's just updated. There's a lot of really clear and concise information to read on there. Is about making dynamic angles and leaning your legs and trying to create angulation during the turn, certain phases in the turn. It's one of those subjects that can usually, quite clearly when you're looking at skiers on the mountain, you can define a good level skier by the angles that they make in the body. So we're going to go through a few of the elements of that and some really key factors of things you can work on at home, okay? So, Rob will post also, at this point, he'll post some videos. And the video for this week's one is specific to this topic, and it's quite useful. I think the video's, it's had almost 300,000 views. It's information that doesn't sort of tell you a specific way you should ski, but it's just giving you a snippet of however you ski. These are a couple of pointers that can help you with the angles. Just going into this week's subject, I would just want to mention one of the charities that we support, I'm a patron for, been for over a decade, is Snow Camp. Great bunch of guys headed up by Dan and his team, and we've worked with those guys a lot. And I know that there's a lot of the instructors from Snow Camp who are meant to be finishing off their level 1 exam at the moment, working with the great indoor snow domes like Hemel, Manchester, and everything like that, and they've been put on hold. And it must be really, really frustrating because they're obviously just getting involved in the system. So just want to do a really big shout out to all you guys almost trying to finish off your level 1. As you know, as Dan may have said, this stuff we're working on is directly going to help you with your skiing technique anyway. But from all of us at the Academy team, we just want to wish you well and well done for the patience of holding on in there until you can finish it. But hearing great results from Dan, and it seems to be going well. Anyone watching this, Rob will post a link to an event. It's a live webinar event that they're doing. It's myself and Jenny Jones, Graham Bell, Ed Lee and Frank Gardner, all involved in a live chat, and there'll be all sorts of things going on. But we normally have an end of season sort of gathering party fundraising event, and it's going to happen online. But the 5th of May, and as I said, Rob will post a link to it. But it'll be really good banter, good quality content worth tuning into, and looking at ways in which we can keep the charity there going, because obviously everyone from a charity point of view is suffered at the moment. So just moving on to this week's topic, leg lean and angulation. We've gone over, as I said, Rob edited a video here, and we talked through angulation. Now, with this subject, we know that we see a big difference between a left and right turn with a lot of people, as we said right throughout these talks. And in terms of the classic, over 20 odd years of doing video analysis sessions here in Verbier and filming thousands of skiers coming towards the camera directly, making their turns and trying to match their left turn and their right turn, we can usually always see, so we're not talking about sort of 5 or 10%, we're sort of talking about 95%, if not more, of a classic ski off on a Sunday or a Monday where people are coming down the slope, skiing towards the camera, and they're making their one good turn and they're making their other turn that doesn't quite have the same cut, the same dynamics. And we often see people having the ability to ski quite well, actually, at very high levels, but one side of the body doesn't angulate the same as the other. So this might start to sound repetitive, but it's not. It's not like last week's range of movement. It's a completely different range of movement. And the way that we're looking at this is that we're sure, because we've done this test as well, that when people actually try and mimic the movement, there is usually a tightness. And you can try this at home. I'm just going to check the views to see what area I can try and show you at. So if I go to make a leaning movement here, I know that when I ski, personally, I know that that's my strongest side, and I've got nothing restricted here, nothing restricted here on that side of the body. If I switch it around and I try to make a movement, straight away there, I can feel a little bit of tightness around my sacroiliac joint. And funny enough, just a bit more tightness around that side of the hip. So we know, because we've done this test with people, that there's a couple of things you can work on at home with it. So one of them is creating that angle and to try and move across and to get that hip to move inside and to rebound it. As you come through that, if you've got a side of the body that you work on in a static situation that actually feels, before you've even started to put your ski boots on or skis on, that actually feels restricted, it will amplify when you're on the mountain. And the reason it amplifies is because if you've got knowledge that there's something slightly tight and restricted in the body before you get going, once you get going and you've got all the other distractions, all the other things going on around you where you've got force coming through the body, sometimes like pneumatic drill if you're skiing bumps or hard as snow, you've got to know that you can create an angle, but if you know that there's a part of the body that doesn't like it, it will show itself. Whether it's like it's about to hurt, so you restrict yourself, or whether you go through and you're just physically stopped in doing it. We've seen in this quite a lot of change, and when we go and do these talks around the UK, we get people sometimes in a room, if we have time, we go through the angulation test, and nearly everybody feels a difference between left and right. So one thing is just simply range of movement. The second thing is sometimes people are more confident falling and leaning one way than the other. So just to put it in sort of context, if they don't have a physical restriction or anything catching in the back, there can still be one side of the body, linked into obviously left and right side of how we work, whether you're left-handed, right-handed, there's all sorts of factors that go into it. But that can also be an area where people don't have that confidence to fall one way as they do the other. So that is something else that you also may be able to relate to. If you've ever felt, the anxiety of going into a steeper slope, we've all been there when it doesn't look as lovely and sort of soft as it should have done, and it's more exposed and it's faster. It could be slippier. The ice is running faster because it hasn't snowed in a while. In those situations, you can sometimes feel that. It may also be the same if you're carving on piste, or if you're making your turns on piste and you're going into your turn. There's one turn that you don't even have to think about, but then there's another turn that you do think about. In fact, you think about it so much you almost fear yourself out on trying to let yourself go in it. I've done it myself where I've skied knowing I've got a bit of back pain, and I can sort of usually always get into my right hand turn without too much thought. But my left hand turn, even this season when I was out skiing where I knew I had a tightness in my back, I can feel that hold my skiing back. So that's just something worth thinking about, you know, and this goes right the way back to basic, you know, very basic early days skiing, even like basic parallel skiing. So that's something there. I'm going to just show you a video, and the video is showing you, and this is the one that Rob will post online so you guys can interact with it, and it's just showing a turn being made, and typically with the white line you can see the angle in the body and where the turn comes through. And I'm just going to show you a skier, a really good skier actually. This guy skied with us from one of our summer courses, and you can see this is his stronger turn. And he's only making short radius turns, you know, so he's not like he's got a lot of speed being carried, he's on a relatively flat slope. But as he comes through, you can see this is his strong right-hand turn. And as he comes through it, the turn gets made, it's in a really nice position, hands are in a good position. But watch what happens when he goes to make his left-hand turn. And this wasn't just a one-off, like catching him on a dodgy turn, you could say on video analysis. He came through his turn, and that was happening all day. And it wasn't until he saw it on video and actually worked off of snow. He actually did a lot of work off snow, working on that left-hand turn. So for him, it was a matter of being back in the chalet in Trevino, where he was just repeatedly working the angle and actually just trying to get that sense of how he can flow and move. Going to the right, he didn't have to think about it. But going to the left, this is the one where you can almost see on that picture, you almost wish a sledgehammer would come in and just like whack the hips across and create that angle in the body. But as I said, it's not just this. There's so many skiers that come and join us on a regular basis that carry this type of difference between left and right. So one of the things he did, he worked on repeating the movement. As we said about what Adrian was working on with the rotation, that repetition of movement can really help. The other thing he did was trying to stretch. So he put his foot out in front of the other one, and he tried to create a little bit of stretch here down the side of the body. And you can see what I'm doing there. I've got full support of my right leg, but I'm trying to open out that angle, as in the angle that would be made if he was trying to get lower and lower with his skiing. When he first tried it, there was a tightness down one side of the body. And one of the things you can do, I know our masters groups have been working on it with some videos Jordan's been posting to them, because they've put a huge amount of effort into their skiing and have achieved, well, I've been watching the videos, they've made massive achievements skiing into some very off-piste situations and quite advanced expert levels of skiing. And what Jordan's been showing them online is some foam roller exercises. And some of you will know that, you know, down the side of your leg, you've got your ITB, and that sometimes can get quite tight. I know many sports repetitively that you do, like running or cycling, over long distances, you can find that tightening up. It will certainly happen during a week of skiing. And just a very simple foam roller exercise down the side of the body, you know, getting a tennis ball into your glutes and that sort of area can really help yourself open up that angle. So that's something that works for this guy who came and skied with us. You can see as he finishes his turn off and comes through, it's just a turn that doesn't quite get the angulation. But you know, and this is what the text is showing you there, the result, because he isn't creating the angle, the outside ski is flatter. And obviously if it's flatter, it's got less grip, and it won't allow you to sort of grip at certain speeds the same, and it won't allow you to sort of control yourself on steep, you know, more dangerous skiing, you could say. So that's just something that I think it will be a really good bit of education for you guys to think of, is when you get out of this class, try and test yourself. You know, go and start to work on your angulation. Again, you know, you can give us the feedback on that. The other thing we gave him to work on, so another stay-at-home exercise, was just getting a cushion down the side of the hip and finding a wall and literally just bouncing off the wall. So he was falling against the wall repeatedly. And with the cushion, you can use it as like a dynamic exercise. Now, there's loads of other things you can do. You can go to great lengths to try to get, you can put rubber bands around yourself, tie around banister, whatever, and sort of feel yourself falling away dynamically and bouncing back. Graham's, a friend of ours, Graham Bell's got a great skier's edge machine. It's very, very good for working the feet. Doesn't work the hips in the same way, but it'll get you the feeling of that separation going. But there's so much you can do. But the simple basics of something you could do today at home during your lockdown is putting a pillow down the side of your hip in your tracksuit bottoms and falling against the wall. Okay, so falling against the wall, first of all, you'd start off very passively, quite close to the wall, and just bounce against it with your hip, and you'd find that the little bit of cushion off your pillow would bounce you back. And then eventually over time you just step further and further away from the wall. So that's a couple of exercises that'll work for you. On this video you'll see Rob at the end of the video using that sort of falling against the wall exercise, and it's a very nice explanation. So what'll be interesting from our side is to get you guys to go away and first assess it to see if there's any restriction going one side or the other. You know, I would guarantee that most people watching this would find there is. And then work on your exercises. You know, you can work on trying to develop the range of movement. Start to think about possibly putting a stretch there in between it, just to feel what the ITB feels like, what your glutes feel like in your lower back. And then get to the point where you're doing it dynamically. You put a pillow down the side of your hip and you're bouncing against the wall. And getting that rebound will make a big difference to it. You know, the other things that come into it, you know, dynamic skiing, great skiing, it's not just about how you move your hip and what sort of lean you create. It's a lot also about how you control pressure and how you develop leg extension with this as well. Leg extension is very much connected to the dynamics and how you get your leg inside the turn. In the same way that you're trying to make dynamic angles, from a technique point of view, you really need to know that you can flex your inside leg and create that space to get that hip to drop and move inside. Quite often from the technique side, we find people that are doing all the great work on the outside leg, trying to make angles, the body's in a great position, but their inside leg is kind of a little bit static or blocking them from getting to a further angle. So, you know, softening the inside leg at the right time in the arc, in the time in the turn shape, is a key element to creating further dynamics with this. The leg extension aspect of skiing and the difference between your inside leg and your outside leg, we're going to be covering on week 5, which is next week's topic. So that's going to be a big thing for us to be looking at. So I think that gives you guys some idea of what we're talking about, and I'm going to put the camera back on just to sort of bring the session to a close there. So the outside leg, as we said, next week, outside leg, inside leg, that's going to be something we focus on and talk about with you guys. We know it'll make quite a bit of difference, and there'll be no doubt from this week's talk, there'll be some interesting points. We get a lot of instructors writing in, a lot of recreational skiers, and we get a lot of physios, you know, writing in and talking to us about how they think things can benefit. And the whole thing goes into the mix, which is great. It just means that we can put out their information that has quite a few different levels of professionalism that's going to get you guys a result with it. So have a go at the exercises. Define which is your tighter side if you have one. Some people won't, but most of you will. Think back to your skiing. If you've got a video of your skiing from last season, or this season as it was half of the season, and the season before, if you've got some video of you skiing straight at the camera, but you know, feel free to send it in to us, or just have a look at home and see if you can tell your tighter side in terms of how you make angles. And then even from that, you'll be able to work at your stay-at-home exercises in terms of trying to get that dynamic balance laterally across the body. What we'll do, guys, is we'll tune in next week with you guys at 10 AM. We'll cover, as we said, leg extension, leg flexion. So basically, as we all go through turns, it does differ between piste and powder. But certainly sort of kicking off the subject on piste, we know that we want to get a nice long leg extension and a really nice flex on the inside leg to create the most angulation we can do and the most dynamics we can do. It does differ in powder, and we'll show those comparisons next week. But once again, you know, thanks for all the feedback from last week's talk. We really appreciate it. These are not the, someone was asking about, you know, talking in front of a crowd of people. Funny enough, it's not, you know, I don't find that too bad to do, and we've done it for years at ski shows and things like that. But talking to your phone with nobody in the room is a little bit of a different subject. So if ever it doesn't come across as smoothly, you know, we apologise for that. But it's just it's a bit of a weird thing to do. But it's all good. It seems to be getting results. The idea, as we said in the first place, of doing it was because we were getting people writing in for what do I do now the season's ended. Hopefully this is giving you some stuff to work on. But work through the video. You'll see it online. You'll probably be able to identify a few things. Send us the videos in and we will help you if you need that. And other than that, we'll tune in next week at 10 a.m. UK time for another one of the webinars. Thanks again for watching, guys. Thanks again for all the feedback. Have a good week. Stay safe. Thank you.